Hey folks, welcome back to The Unicorn and the Frog. I am Stacy Ryan, the unicorn.
And I am Bill Ryan, the frog.
And we are joined today by a first-time author, Natalie Burton. Say hi, Natalie.
Hi, everybody.
She's actually in the car, but she's not driving. We're making sure safety first. Safety first. So before we get into the book, tell us a little bit about you. You know, where you're from. You don't have to give age unless you want to. Kind of just, a little background story of Natalie.
Sure. So I grew up in a small town, Chillicothe, Missouri, which is about an hour and a half northeast of Kansas City. My family was involved in the hardware business, and it grew to about 70 stores. So we relocated to Kansas City literally the day I graduated from high school. And from there, then I went to college at Westminster College, which is a small liberal arts college in Fulton, Missouri, near University of Missouri. And I had a wonderful experience there. That's where I met my ex-husband. And from there, moved to Kansas City. I've lived in Kansas City in the suburb of Leawood for 30 years. I have two amazing sons, Burton and Forrest. They are both freshmen and senior at University of Missouri. And they give me my drive to, just be a good mom and be a good person and do the best I can do for them.
Aww.
And I started writing my book about a year ago and took the year off from work to do that. So I solely focused on the book. And then I just went back into the workforce 2.5 months ago into a company that owns a large franchisee of KFC's, Taco Bell, Sonic's, and Arby's.
Nice.
Awesome.
So
yeah.
As a fellow author, a couple of questions there. Are you published yet?
I am.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I am Yes, I am published by Amazon. I signed on with Amazon in May of this year.
Excellent.
Congratulations.
And
thank you very much.
So Stacy shared with me that this started as a novel, and now it's. Do you consider it nonfiction?
It is a fiction novel. It did start as a nonfiction. It was just going to be a progression of, childhood to high school to college to my marriage to, et cetera, et cetera. And then with Cindy, my publicist, and Amazon, they thought it would be a better seller as a fiction novel. So it's kind of left up to the reader to decide the parts that are fiction and the parts that are nonfiction.
Okay. I got that backwards.
Yeah, that's my fault.
No, it's all right. I did read the whole book.
Wow, amazing!
Yeah. And so you'll tell us, how you want to proceed, address some of the topics in the book. I mean, I think Stacy's got
I've got some questions.
a bunch of questions, but. So actually, why don't I just hand it off to you?
Okay.
Get us started.
So, again, not giving away too much of the book yet. The small version of what inspired you to tell your story. Again,
Sure. So when I filed for divorce 3 years ago, it was September 9th. So I'm coming up on the third anniversary. I went to I call it kind of a healing facility in Jupiter, Florida. And I spent a month there just doing intense therapy. And that is where I met Liz,
Right.
who is still my therapist to this day. She lives in the Jupiter/West Palm Beach area. And so she's the one that inspired me to write the book. She just kept saying, I really think you putting your thoughts and notes on paper more in a journal format will really help you heal. And
Agreed.
So I started doing that. And then about a month later, she introduced me to Cindy. And then this is where it just took off. And now it's actually a book.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing that it all happened in just a year.
And when you and I spoke a little bit yesterday, I kind of asked this question, but I think it's, an important question to ask again. So the majority of I'm 54 this year and divorced, newly married to my darling husband next to me. And I was
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was a single mother for many years. The majority of my friends are also divorced with kids. So I think it's important to explain why your divorce is different than ours, and more so that enough to write a book about it, right? Because there's differences there. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I would say mine was just more than an end to a marriage. It was a profound journey of self-discovery and transformation. So, I mean, everybody's divorce is different, but I think they all have a common thread of unhappiness and, whatever the bad things that are going on behind the scenes. But for me, it ended up just being a journey, which is why I named the book A Journey of Love and Discovery, on how to stand on my own 2 feet again, how to get my confidence back again, and how to just learn how to be me as a single person.
Right. Yeah.
So just to kind of give me an anchor, if you will, how much of the novel I guess aligns with your experience? I mean, you say it started as journaling, and Liz encouraged you to go further. For me, just having read the book, how much of the book would you say reflects your reality?
I would say it is probably 75% reality.
Okay.
There's definitely some fictional characters in there, but it is a very true adaptation, especially the parts in high school and college and the marriage. That is all very real and very true. And the kind of love story that you read about that I fall in love with Ethan, that's a little more fantasy and fiction. But I will say I've fallen in love once since the divorce, and we can get into that a little bit later. But I do know I can love again, because I was really worried that, can I ever love anybody again? Will anybody love me? Was a really scary, thing for me to process.
Right. Did the boys read the book?
The boys, as far as I know, have not read the book. They're pretty apprehensive about it. They're excited for me, but they're also, they want to make sure
Mom is okay.
Yeah, mom's okay. And it's not just airing our family's dirty laundry. What I've told them is there's 2 sides to every story.
Sure.
And divorce. And this is my story, and your dad has his own story. And this is just, my adaptation of that. I do hope they read it.
So after my divorce, I did see somebody briefly also in Jupiter, just to talk about like proceeding as a single mother, and finding the right therapist is not easy. It's not like, finding a good band to listen to. I mean, there's so many, right? So you have to have that good fit. How long did it take for you to find the right fit?
So I started therapy about 2 years before I filed for divorce, and I found a couple really good ones, and I also found a couple really bad ones.
Right.
We also did couples counseling. The couple that I found in Kansas City that I really connected with, one ended up having a health issue, so she had to, step away. So I was like panicked, oh my gosh, I've got to start over again. And another one that was really good in Kansas City was our couples counselor, and she was going to be brought into our divorce, and thankfully she wasn't. So she couldn't take me on as an individual patient just because of, she knew all the background from the couples therapy.
Right.
But then I moved when I was in Florida at my facility doing my therapy. That's where I met Liz. And I immediately, she was running a group therapy class. So she was not my individual therapist while I was there. And I was like, oh, this lady's really cool. She was, she seemed about my age. She had two kids about my boy's age, and she was kind of sassy, and we just connected. So I stopped after her class and just said, hey, that was a great session. I really got out a lot out of it. And would you be willing to be my therapist? Because what I kept running into down in Florida was nobody could take me on as a patient because they weren't licensed in Kansas.
Gotcha.
So Liz, and also there was a little bit of a I don't know what the right word is, but a lot of them didn't want to take me on too because I had been inpatient and inpatient, and then I think a lot of it was licensing. But Liz ended up resigning from the place where I was, and she ended up. I stayed in Jupiter for a week after I got out of the facility. She met me at my hotel, and we had our first therapy session there. And she said, "I'll take you on no matter what." And so we've just done Zoom, and we do a lot of texting, and we do a lot of communication on social media. And
she's on speed dial.
She's on speed dial. And I have had 2 emergency sessions with her in the last 3 weeks where she'll drop everything and just talk me off the ledge, which it always helps. She always has good insight.
Yeah.
So I feel very fortunate to have met her. I think I met, she's a person that was supposed to be in my life, and I just really care about her.
Yeah. Well, it brings so much value to your journey, right? Having the right guidance and support. That's
right.
Major. Like if you don't have that,
it's huge.
Yeah. Then you're kind of on your own. So,
right.
Tell me a little bit about the writing process for you. So where did you write? How long did it take? Which you might have said that. I apologize.
That's okay.
Was it in the comfort of... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wrote it all in the comfort of my home. And I live in a pretty small place, and it was making me stir crazy, especially in the winter months. I mean, January and February, I thought, can I keep doing this? This is really driving me crazy. I'm going nuts. And I would go on alone trips and did some writing by doing that. I have a lake house at Lake of the Ozarks. So I went down there a few times and just went alone. And did some alone trips to Lake of the Ozarks to do writing, which was really beneficial. But I'm a very outgoing social person. So it was hard to balance, I want to go out, but I should really write. And so I just had to be really disciplined. And I obviously found ways to stay social and do the things that I like to do that make me happy. But it was a lot of, sometimes I would have writer's block, and it would come to me at like 9:00. I would get this surge, and I would write all night.
Wow.
And then, maybe for like 3 or 4 days, I just had nothing. So
that's okay.
Pretty good coverage.
The chapters are numbered, not named.
Yes.
Personal choice, preference?
So I started the book with an outline, and I named the chapters. I mean, they might have just been like a little blurb, but we just decided to go with no chapter names. And that was kind of a decision between Cindy and Amazon.
Okay.
As you drive by an Amazon truck.
Yeah. Which of these chapters or which one do you feel was the most difficult to write?
I think just in general, I would say chapter 2 is pretty intense. It talks about, that's when I'm in college and had a couple traumatizing experiences. And then I think, chapter 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that talk about, my marriage or they're pretty, I'm doing the audio for the book. I think I told you that on the phone. And it's really emotional to go back and reread. It's like, oh gosh, I forgot I wrote that, or oh my gosh, I forgot that happened. Because what I've tried to do in my therapy is put all these bad memories behind me. And Liz taught me to use the rear view mirror. And, I only try to look forward and not go back into the past, but just definitely doing the audio and just rereading things, or it's emotional.
Yeah, absolutely. Questions, husband?
Let's move on to relationship questions. I know you've got.
Yeah. So relationships, we talk about relationships a lot. We have found that our communication within this marriage is much different than former relationships. Tell us a little bit about the struggles of communication within your marriage.
Communication, I felt like we were good communicators for the most part. Maybe we weren't on the same page with our thoughts and ideas, but he worked, so he was home office our whole marriage, and I was basically a stay-at-home mom our whole marriage, except for 5 years of it in the beginning. And I went back to work 1 year when my son was in middle school. But we came to the point where we would just start emailing each other from our offices instead of I'd really rather not go have this conversation in the kitchen with him. So I'm just going to email him what I'm thinking right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say the communication obviously fell off. The last 7 years is when I just really noticed things were changing. And those were the formative years where I really was like, I've got to make a plan and I got to work this plan on how to get it back. I just think communication is key in relationships, and looking for a new partner. That's just extremely important to me.
Yeah. Your upbringing in the house with your family and parents, what was their relationship like?
My dad worked a lot because he was running hardware stores. So he had retail hours, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom and made the ship, run. They, looking back, I think my dad was extremely hard on her. He was quick to anger and yell at us, my brother, my mom. So they weren't like huggy, kissy, I love you kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a real struggle for my ex-husband because he wanted that reassurance. He wanted the hugs. He wanted the I love yous. And you're just not going to get that from my parents. My mom has passed away,
mm-hmm.
And my dad is now remarried. So in his marriage to his new wife is just night and day of what I remember their relationship being like. So sometimes that's hard for me to see that because
Sure.
It's like,
why didn't mom get that?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and one answer to that question is we grow and we learn, right? Hopefully we learn from our experiences, maybe from our mistakes. So that, that can be part of it. Did you ever broach that subject with your father?
So I talked about my 3 aunts. We definitely talk about it, but I'm just not comfortable talking to my dad about it. And since I filed for divorce 3 years ago, we have had a very rocky relationship.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Go ahead.
No, he would just say, I absolutely support you 100% to get divorced. And then literally 2 days later, he'd say, absolutely not. You need to make this work. We're from a family that there's no divorce. And
wow.
So it was really, really, really frustrating. And Liz has been instrumental in helping me navigate my relationship with him, which requires a lot of boundaries.
What about your brother? What's his relationship or memories of your parents?
I would say he took the brunt of the kind of yelling and my dad was really hard on my brother. But he's also a prodigy of my father. So I also have a pretty rocky relationship with him too.
Mm.
And he's been through a divorce. But it's just, I don't know. He's in the camp that, he understands, but I have a better relationship with him than I do my father, but it's just complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Tell me about the cover of the book. It's interesting.
Oh, thank you. So Amazon helped me design that.
Okay.
And I absolutely love it. I love the colors. And it just, it's kind of like I'm walking into, to me, it symbolizes I'm like leaving one world and walking into a new world.
Yeah.
So that's just the kind of the way I look at it.
Okay.
You had mentioned to Stacy, I know when you did the phone call earlier in the week, that you have experienced narcissism, and I'm not going to.
Yes.
I'm not going to point fingers at who it was. You feel free to share it. Because you're not explicit about that really in the novel. You are explicit about in the novel. I should say the novel is explicit about Scott being controlling, and which you don't really go into how that shift occurred. The beginning of the relationship between Scott and his wife, was really good, and then all of a sudden, we see a different Scott, which of course is a telltale sign of narcissist, right?
Right. I didn't even know what the word narcissism or a narcissist meant.
Right. Many people. Same thing.
I did some therapy about a year before I filed for divorce. And that therapist was like, hey, have you ever heard the word narcissism or narcissist? Or gaslighting. And I was like, no. And she met my ex-husband, and she was like, wow. She's like, I need to kind of tell you what I think's going on here. And I need you to get a divorce lawyer as soon as possible. And I need you to, keep coming to see me. And she gave me a bunch of books. And so that would have been about 4 years ago in the fall. So about, 4 years ago, this time of year, where I learned the word.
So that I had a very similar experience. And I want to touch on at some point the dating apps, because in your novel it's kind of interesting how the character uses those. But when I first moved to Florida, I was using a dating app, and I ended up driving down to Miami on a date, not really realizing how long a drive it was. It was kind of stupid on my part, but. So anyway, you know how it is in dating apps. Everybody kind of unloads their story, right? And some people are, very affected by earlier relationships, and they become kind of defensive or guarded about that.
Right.
So, we sat down, dinner at a nice restaurant. She told her story. I told my story. And immediately she said, "Oh, your wife's a narcissist." And for me, I knew the word, but when I thought of that word, the first image I thought of was Hannibal Lecter. Like, I thought of narcissist as this, like, super evil kind of person that damaged other human beings, which, of course, narcissists do that and are capable of that. And it's interesting, too, because she said, here's some books you should read, similar to what you said about your therapist.
Right.
To this day, I have a struggle getting my brain around that word. But, it's become part of our lexicon today. And, I'm sure there's a possibility that we throw that word around too casually, but, tell me, give me a simple, dictionary definition of what you think narcissism is.
Yeah. So the one like characteristic that I started to notice was entitlement. And, I'm better than everybody. We're better than everybody. Our family is better than everybody. And he felt entitled to a couple properties that my family owned. And that started becoming a very big red flag for me. I'm like, these are my things. And so I would say entitlement is a big one for me. Quick to anger would be another big one for me. Just having the temper that you never know when it's going to show up. Is it going to show up just because somebody spilled a glass of orange juice in the morning, or is it going to be because, whatever. I mean, it's just, you just never knew when it was going to come. And a lot of that has to do with the addiction problem that he struggled with. So, that would just, the anger and I still see it today in him. And it's a little frightening to me. Manipulation and control. I didn't realize how controlled and manipulated I was. And it got really hectic, I would say, the last year before I filed. He started tracking my location and, would say, oh, hey, I see you at the grocery store. I need you to come home right now. And just bizarre things like that. And just, controlling who you hang out with, controlling who we hang out with as couples. There's just so many forms of control and manipulation that go with a narcissist. I would say blame shifting was a big one for me. It was like, it was always my fault. He always called me crazy. You're crazy. Yeah, you can call me an alcoholic, but you're crazy. And I just got so tired of it. It beat me down. I lost my self-confidence. I just lost who I was.
Your self-worth.
And I would just say, am I crazy? And I'm like, I'm going to therapy. And so that I would say is another big one. And then I would say superficial charm is another one. He's a sales guy, so he's always out there, and buying dinners and doing that. Like, here we go again. Like, I've got to watch this in action another time. So I would say those were the big things for me.
I love the superficial charm. I think that really is a great way to label it. And the entitlement, it's interesting that you use that word so early in the definition, because there's another concept, right, that has become, I don't want to use the word popular because
right.
I'm not a fan at all of entitled people. But it's another thing that we talk about quite a bit in our society. And, we're noticing more and more of these people with this sense of entitlement, which, if we go back through the centuries, you think of, kind of monarchies and monarchs and kings and queens. And certainly with many of them, there was a strong sense of entitlement and, this is mine, I deserve it kind of thing. When I think about narcissism, it's the idea that the person on the other side is getting satisfaction of the pain they're inflicting on somebody else. And,
right.
and so that's a level of manipulation. It goes beyond manipulation. There's an evil there that, I don't know. I'm somewhat reluctant. Well, I think I struggle with understanding how a human being feels good about that kind of influence on another human being. So that's not a natural thing for me to understand. I understand it's part of the definition of narcissism, but it's hard for me to get my brain around somebody motivated that way,
Right. Scary.
Yeah. And so before there was, you were married how long?
23 years. And in fact, today would be my 26th wedding anniversary.
Happy non-wedding anniversary.
Thank you.
You're really going to celebrate that, aren't you?
I'm probably going to.
Yeah. So let's think back to, at some point you're married, how many years? The whole 23 years, there was a point where you were happy in your marriage. And then there was a point where you started to see this narcissistic behavior. But then is there a point where you look back and you say, wow, it actually started back at this point. I just didn't realize it was happening. Does that question make any sense?
For me, I mean, I know when it started happening and whether it was happening before. I'm not sure. I haven't really actually thought about that much, but 7 years, minus the 23, which was my oldest one was in middle school, is when I really started noticing that things were just not okay and not healthy for me mentally and physically.
Yeah.
Did the boys notice this shift in the marriage? Like, did they say,
absolutely. I mean,
oh, wow.
Absolutely they did, because they lived in the house with us. There was a lot of arguing. There was a lot of fighting. There was a lot of late night fighting. My younger one said to me when I told him I was filing for divorce, he said, "Oh, well, I knew you were going to do that. I thought you would just wait till I got out of high school. Now you're ruining my high school years."
Oh, wow.
So they knew, they just, nobody ever wants that to happen. Right.
Right.
And, that's why it took me so long to pull the trigger, because I just had that mom guilt, and it's just hard.
Yeah.
But, I had to start learning. I learned this in therapy. Just like on a plane, when the oxygen mask comes on, you put it on you first, and then you put it on your children. I decided to put myself first, and my ex-husband hated that. Yeah. He just hated it, right. And I was like,
well, because he lost control at that point. He could no longer control and manipulate you.
And it felt so freeing to me. I was like, oh, I didn't even know that I could do this.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I have a good friend who is now following you on social media, of course, because I told her all about you. And she was married to an absolute narcissist and had 2 boys, divorced. I think they were married 10 years. And their relationship, even today, they don't even co-parent well, because he's still in the same mindset that he can control her. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I don't think so, buddy. We're not married anymore. You don't have a chance of telling me what to do." So it is freeing for her and the kids.
I still deal with that too, though. Yeah. It's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. What I was saying was, every time and to this day, every time I see an email from him or a text, my heart immediately starts racing.
Right.
That's the effect that he still has on me. And it's unfortunate.
Through therapy, what are the quick red flags that you look for when you bring somebody new into your life?
I would say, I'm obviously, my radar is back on that list I just shared with you: the entitlement, the anger, the manipulation, the control, the blame shifting, and the superficial charm. So those are definitely on my list. But
you don't always know those right away, right?
That I fall in love with. No, absolutely not.
Takes time.
And I would tell, it does take time. And the relationship that I was in, I wouldn't say I saw the narcissism. We started dating in July, and I started seeing it in the fall. I was like, and I said to him blank, I'm like, "You're a narcissist." And he was like, "No, I'm not." And then I would say, like, kind of list off the things, and he would say, "Oh, maybe I am."
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Different than my experience with my ex-husband, but there was definitely, so that is a challenge. And I would say it's just continuing therapy and working on yourself and putting yourself first, are the, main things to focus on.
Will there be a second book?
Yes, it is in the works. We left it on a cliffhanger on purpose so we could come back and write another book. And we're also hoping, Cindy's working tirelessly to find, maybe make it into a movie or a TV series.
Wow.
So I'm glad you mentioned the cliffhanger, because when I was reading it and I came to the end of that novel, I'm like, wait a minute, is she talking about the episode with Sarah, or is this something different? So it is something different.
Just have to wait and see.
Good for you. Good for you.
Good answer.
One question, I thought it was going to be my last question, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. If you could speak to a 15 or 20-year-old Natalie, what would you tell her?
I think for me, the biggest mistake that I made was not having enough dating experience before I got married. I had a serious boyfriend all through high school, broke up with him, got into college, immediately had a serious boyfriend, broke up with him, and then immediately started dating Scott, or my ex-husband. And I have had the time of my life this last 3 years,
That a
just
girl.
going out and dating and just having fun. And I'm like, so anybody that asks my advice, I would say date around as much as you can before you get married.
Yeah.
That's one of the great values of the dating apps, right? I mean, you get to meet
Yes.
a lot of different people, and that experience not
Good
only
and bad.
It gives you, you learn some tells that other people have, but you also learn more about yourself. Just
Right.
What you don't want.
Yeah.
Right.
It was interesting.
Absolutely.
I dated a woman years ago, and one night she said, you check every box. I'm like, I thought it was a metaphor. And she said, no, I had 16 requirements of somebody I would date.
16.
And you checked 15 of the boxes. And what was my
Wow.
next comment? What was the one I didn't check?
What's the one I didn't check? Right. What was it?
I don't remember. It was so long ago. But, I didn't think that way. I didn't think, it's almost like
we think that way. Like girls and I get together and drink wine and we're like, this is what we want, and we.
As if you can put it in the universe and the universe will give it to you.
Set the bar high though, and don't settle. I mean, that's my other advice. Don't
That's
settle. I'm never going to settle again. And I have been caught in that vortex a few times.
That was my mantra, and
Yes.
You make excuses. You don't call it settling during the relationship, but all right, so he, smokes cigarettes. All right, it's awful. I hate the smell, but he's so wonderful otherwise. No, if you don't smoke, why are you dating somebody who smokes if you hate cigarette smell? Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
this woman with the 15 check marks, we had a nice relationship, and then we didn't. And for her, it felt like, it was like just overnight. And in fairness, it probably felt that way, and even in a certain sense was that way. But for me, the moment I sensed that this person wasn't the right person for whatever that reason, I'm out. Because, again, when
there's
you're
no
dating,
reason to hang on.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
because there's
my
more
girlfriends
people
and I
out
sit
there.
around and we sit around and draft each other's texts and how we're going to break it off with men a lot. She even called me on the way before I got on the phone with you guys, and she's like, "Wait a minute, what do you think? How does this sound?" And I was like, "Sounds good."
Yeah,
we always
yeah.
say full send if we approve.
Yeah.
Well, and Stacy's heard me say this. I think the dating apps, if you're an attractive woman, is a challenge, right? I mean, you get a lot of attention.
It is a challenge.
And it's unfiltered attention. At least when you're out in the world, you can filter who it is you want to interact with. But in the dating app,
right.
it just all comes
Talk
at
about a vortex.
Yeah.
Yeah. That should be another podcast.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to go on another show with you and just talk about because I think my next book is going to be a lot about that, go more into it. The last year, I've had some of the most bizarre and terrible experiences that have been upsetting, especially this summer. So I definitely like to jump back on and talk to you guys about that.
We would love that. I actually had an idea for a book as well. This was before I met Stacy, but I was going to write a book about all the different women that I dated, and each chapter would be
a name,
a woman's name. It wouldn't be the name of the woman that I was dating, but it would, just because there were so many differences, and just certain things about certain women that I dated that just.
And what if they wrote their own book?
If I'm in there, I hope they have nice things to say.
I hope so too. I'm sure they do.
I have a notes app from the last year with
Oh my
all
gosh.
names that have come in and out of my life that I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
And,
We co-write that book.
And it could be a very helpful book, right? I mean, if you think about it,
Right.
again, the name can be a metaphor for a certain kind of behavior. And it's funny because I won't put a number on the number of names, but because I couldn't think of it right now. But there were that many differences, right? I mean, people are so different, and they're different. A dear friend of mine said, when you first start dating somebody, everybody's on their best behavior. You don't really know who you're dating,
right?
Unless you've been dating for 3, 4, 6 months. Yeah.
That's the threshold, in my opinion.
Yeah,
like a solid 6 months.
I didn't always make it to 6 months.
I agree.
Well, no.
I
Why
make
would
it to
you?
like
That's why I said
1
3,
month
4.
or 3 months or 1 week, 1 day.
Well, yeah, if there's too many red flags, you got to get out sooner. That's for sure.
Right.
Well, we would love to schedule a follow-up to go into the dating apps. I think that actually would be.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be interesting. That would be a
very
good.
popular.
Absolutely.